This is not easy on the ZL1, folks. The electronic steering and the intercooler pump really make this difficult. So on the ZL1 they have this belly pan here. That's going to have to come out because this is the front sway bar. So first thing we're going to do is take all this out. It's just one big piece, a bunch of screws. You know, Vic, you were right. It would have been easier to do sway bars when I have the whole front end and the steering thing out and all that. Alright, so now that we have the car in the air and the belly pan's off, we're going to go ahead and loosen up the hardware that holds the sway bar in. We're going to loosen up all the nuts on the end link as well as the bushing that holds the sway bar to the frame. These will be a lot easier to get to with it up in the air than me crawling around on my back. So I'm going to go ahead and loosen these up as well as the rear. Even though the rear is going to be a lot easier to do, it's just easier for this old man to just do it right here. Okay, so the end link nut is an 18 millimeter. That's not bad. So one thing, you're going to have to grab a small wrench and hold the end of the bolt while you loosen it, the nut, because otherwise the bolt's just going to spin in there. Okay, so if you are wondering, you can hold this bolt with an 8 millimeter. The nut is an 18 millimeter. So I backed them all off. I'm just going to finger tight them for now so I can get the car off the lift. Now I'm going to tackle the bushings. Those ones are kind of tight in there. That's going to be fun. I think I'm going to try a socket on that. The car's dirty. So I ended up using a 15 millimeter on this flex head just to kind of get in here, just to get them broke loose. They're not very tight, but I really think it'll be easier to get them completely off from up above. Okay, so the same goes for the rear. They're 15 millimeter bolts, and these are really easy to get to, so they'll be no problem for you. Okay, so the rear end link bolt and the nut on top, they're both 15 millimeter. Alright, it's coming off. It's coming out, so we're good for now. Time to get it on the ground. So as I worked out, it's actually easier for me to take off both wheels. You'll see the end link is still in the sway bar because it's actually kind of frozen in there. Not so much frozen, it's just the weight of the wheel, because it's jacked up, is putting pressure on it. So I just want to jack up the lower control arm a little bit to relieve that pressure, and it'll come right out. All right. The other side, I didn't have to jack it up that far. Literally, it was like a ½ an inch. So now that that's out, we can get the sway bar out. There's probably an easier way to do it, but I don't always do things the easy way. Get yourself the 15 millimeter and a swivel and a long extension, and you can reach down there. The driver's side toward the rear is the hardest one. So yeah, this wire right here on mine, that's the intercooler pump right there. There we go. Now that's out of the way. And as you can see, the bushing is up and off the studs, and so is the other side over here. So we can go ahead and try to fish that out. All right, I think I'm going to loosen up the intercooler pump just so I can push against it. I think that might help, along with having this bar up a little higher. I thought I read somewhere where you'd have to move something on the splash shield, and I maybe this is just it, but Oh, there's the other nut. I was wondering where that went. No big deal. Just put that up there. Oh yeah, that's gonna make it easier. They make it look so easy on TV. I'm gonna jack that up slightly because the end of the bar is hitting on the lower control arm. So I need to move this up about an inch. Okay, so splash shield on the other side is kind of in the way, so I'm going to pop it off too. So now I got both sides jacked up pretty high. In order to try to clear that, it keeps running into stuff. So now this bushing on this side is pushing against the cooler lines, and the bar is up against the coolant pump. So the bar's out. I ended up prying off these. And I just put a screwdriver in there. I had to jack up both wheels to get clearance off the boot because it was wanting to rub on the boot. On the ZL1, you have the electric motor in the way, you have the intercooler pump in the way, and the coolant lines that go by the damper. These were the main culprit moving stuff around, so I pried these off. These are split, so they just peel off the bar. Once I did that, it was literally just jacking this up to get clearance off the tie rod, and then I fished it out. I brought it this way, and then I dropped it below the passenger side frame rail and just started moving it out, and it's not too bad. I did not have to jack the engine up. I didn't want to risk breaking the oil pan. It's just a cast aluminum pan, so I didn't want to be jacking on it. So this is possible to take this out without jacking up the engine. So now that I've got it out, let's compare it to the other one. Well, there's a size comparison for you guys. The new one to the old one. So the new one is 100% stiffer than the old one. The car does have a little bit of body roll. It's not bad. This does a really good job of correcting that. This will hopefully get rid of all of it. Just in case I want to do autocross. But anyway, we're going to put this in now. You know what a pain that was to get out. So, sorry I didn't get footage of that, but yeah, I was frustrated. Just remember to take the bushings off. Maybe spray them with some Windex might help you slip them off. They get kind of sticky, but putting screwdrivers in the end of the bushing and just working it back and forth when it's on the end seems to help. Make sure you get your left and your right correct before you try doing this. So I am bringing it up through the center of the car. That little ring is getting, there we go. Okay. So now that I got it here past the frame rail, I got to snake it out more toward the driver's side while rotating it to get that other side to go up. I'm just trying to get the passenger side over the top of the passenger side frame rail. Right frame rail. The bar is a little bit bigger around. So, had a little bit of trouble there. the lower control rod's in the way, but I don't want to jack up too much because then it lifts it off my jack stands. I might have to do that anyway if I can't snake it in. And I'm right there. All I got to do is get the passenger side over the frame rail and through, and I'm home free. But just everything is in the way. All right, so the front and rear sway bar come with two. I got these mixed up, so according to the instructions, the one with the 90-degree zerks are for the front, and you can aim them in or out, whichever way makes it easier for you to grease. And then the ones with the straight zerk are for the rear. And it also has the end links, because when you change the bar, where the end links mount to the bar, you have 3 different positions. Your end links may need an adjustment, and that's what those are for. So they give you some blue Loctite. They also give you some grease. So you want to put the grease in here and put it on the bar. Like that little hole there is supposed to line up with this, I suppose. Yeah. Hope it does. Supposedly it will. Okay. So I guess that's why that doesn't quite matter. So you're going to get grease all over squeezing out of here between this and the poly, but supposedly the grease is going to go down in that hole there. So we're just going to now the Loctite is for the nuts that you're putting back on with this. I'll have the torque spec for that when I get to it for you guys. Not like that for now. This one, I have more of this stuff. I just want to use theirs up. Well, one thing I'm sure of, the rear's not going to be this hard. Everything is in the way. So really the freaking motor's in the way. And you know what? The motor is attached to the motor's attached to the rack, so it's not going anywhere. The rack is attached to the frame, not the engine. So the engine it actually isn't in the way. It's the electric motor for the steering. And those bolts are only accessible from the top. Well, yeah, I can see them here. They need to be in a certain spot. The tie rod end is in the way. It's just really in the way. So right now I'm taking out the ball stud for the height magnetic ride control sensor, because it's hitting the ball and it's really easy to take it out. It's a number 10. Okay, so here's the sway bar. I had trouble getting it past this boot, so I actually took the tie rod off. Just took the 18 millimeter to it, pulled the nut off, drove it out. It wasn't hard, and then I rotated the whole spindle. I straightened it out and jacked up the spindle enough to push this back far enough to get the sway bar to clear the boot. So it's in the proper spot now. I just need to line it up and put it back together. Okay, so this is how you want it to sit in there. It's between the lower control arm with the tow rod on the inside of the loop. Now we can go ahead and lower the spindle down and reinsert the tow rod into the spindle. So the tow rod is back in. I'm going to torque that before I put the wheel on. So now we can go ahead and attach the end links to there. Well, let's see what the instructions say. I might have to put the bushing on first. Okay, no lie guys, that's hard to get in there with everything in the way. The ZL1 is not an SS. So this is the service manual for the car with its torque. Lower control arm, stabilizer, shaft link nut, stabilizer, shaft insulator clamp nuts, 32 pounds. Yeah, they don't give much information here. The only thing they say to do is to remove the outer tie rod, which we had to do on the passenger side. They make it sound so simple, but it's really not. They're saying to do it with the suspension in the neutral position. Yeah, I had to move it around quite a bit. So the end link, front stabilizer shaft nut. They're saying 52 foot-pounds for that. Seems excessive. The bushing nuts, 32 foot-pounds. That sounds reasonable. So here's the outer tie rod installation procedure. So the nut number 5 right there, they're saying to tighten it to 22 foot-pounds and an additional 120 degrees. That's interesting. Usually that means a one-time use. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, but I'm going to put some blue Loctite on it because I don't think the thing will come out, but let me tell you what, if it does, it's going to be a problem. The inner tie rod nut is this one. We're not going to be moving that one. Didn't even loosen it. See, they're saying to use a new nut. So a new nut should be used, probably because it's a locking nut. I can feel it when I'm tightening it. So maybe get a new nut, 22 foot-pounds plus 120 degrees. That usually means you're stretching a bolt when they do that. So I don't believe they're stretching the tie rod threads, but 22 foot-pounds plus 120 degrees. Yeah, that's a third. End link. You're saying 52 foot-pounds. ones. 32 foot-pounds. Okay, we got the grease all in there, lots of it. And I didn't put any grease on the outside here. I don't think it's gonna matter. If it squeaks, it squeaks. I suppose you could, if you wanted to, put a little grease on here. Might not be a bad idea, just to keep the poly from squeaking against the bracket itself. Alright, so as you can see, the ring on the sway bar is going to go on the inside of the bracket and the bushing. So I need to get the rubber around on the back side of that. Well, that bar really got all that paint got banged up. I guess I'm glad I didn't paint it red. Okay, that was super easy. So I'm putting the Zerk toward the inside of the car because I can put it up on the lift and grease it. Oh, that went on easy. Super easy. Right over the studs, just like that. So these are the nuts for the bushing bracket. These are a top locking nut. These are considered a one-time use. I know a lot of people that get 2 uses out of them because they'll still tighten up. But if you try doing that, you better put some blue Loctite on, which is what I'm gonna do. Alright, I put the magnetic ride control sensor ball stud back in the lower control arm. This just pops on and off, so 10mm for that. I took it off to help with clearance on the bar because when I was trying to install the bar, it was hitting it. So I got the nuts just loosely on the, just loose on here for now. Go. Same thing with this nut. It's a top lock meant for one-time use. Like I said, I know people that use them twice, any more than twice, and they're just too loose. I can feel that tightening up. But that's going to get some blue Loctite as well. We're just putting it there for now. And same with this side. Again, I still need to torque the lower control arm, I'm sorry, the tie rod end. Okay, so that is, so the bar is in, everything's connected. So we can actually get this put down on the ground and put blue Loctite on all this and secure it. I do want to tighten down the bushing ones all the way down. I'm not going to torque them, but you can see how it's lifting up right here because I attached it. I don't want that. I want this completely flat. Even if I have to move it, it's going to shift, but I don't want it pushing up against the nut when I've barely got a thread on it. So I'm going to tighten those down with the wrench, but allow this to slide a little bit, but get a lot of bite on that thread because it's going to be pushing up against it. Same with these. I'm going to bring these down. These will rotate, so that's not a problem. These can be torqued now if you wanted. So I did reroute the wiring for the intercooler pump harness, It was wrapping around the stock bar on this, and it was kind of tight, and so I just moved it out of the way. It literally, you could probably do it even with the bar in the car. I did. And then I reattached the bolts that held the intercooler pump, so they're tight. So that's ready to go. Now the bar can still move. Obviously I don't want it jammed up against that that plug, so I'm going to move the bar toward the back of the car and tighten down the nuts over here so we can get the car on the ground. Whatever. Now we're on the top side. You can see the bushing and how the zerk's facing. That'll be fairly easy to get to. So I'm going to buzz these nuts down from the top side here, just a little bit to hold them in place. Alright, so we got the tie rod. I put some blue Loctite on that. That is a nylock, it's not a top locking nut. So I put blue Loctite generously on it, on the threads. Put the nut down, 22 foot-pounds with the torque wrench. This didn't spin like it was wanting to coming off. So it tightened up, 22 foot-pounds, and then 120 degrees rotation with the 18 millimeter. So okay, so since the end link is actually a ball joint, I went ahead and put the blue Loctite on the nut, 18 millimeter socket, and that's 52 foot-pounds. Now I did have to hold this with the crescent wrench while I tightened this down, but once it got to a point, then I was actually able to torque this without the bolt spinning. So 52 foot-pounds, and that'll still move to neutral when we get the car on the ground. So I've decided on the bushing mounts. Now I moved that bushing on both sides as far that way, as far to the rear of the car as I could, because if they were toward the front, it would have been running into my pump connector that I was talking about earlier. I didn't want the bar smashing up against the connector. For one, I want to be able to get the connector off, and I don't want it damaging it. So because I positioned the bar this way and tightened them down, I'm going to go ahead and take one nut off at a time, put blue Loctite, and tighten down to 32 foot-pounds, and call it good where it's at, because I know it's away from that connector and it's not going to hurt anything. So there's nothing in the book and there's nothing in the instructions that say that that should be in the middle or one way or the other. So it may make a change on the stiffening slightly. I don't think it's going to be a lot to worry about. I'm not going to worry about it because I'm more worried about that connector. So I'm going to take those nuts off one at a time, put blue Loctite, and then retorque to 32 foot-pounds. The car is back on the ground, got the wheels on. I still need to torque those to 122 foot-pounds for this car. So we're done with the front. Finally, what a pain. And now we're going to move to the back.